The galaxy had known nothing but war for 1 million years. Two ancient civilizations called the Dominion, and the Collective had been fighting each other since before humanity learned to make fire. Their hatred was older than Earth itself. Their weapons could destroy entire planets. Their fleets numbered in the billions, and neither side remembered why they started fighting in the first place. Admiral Jack stood on the bridge of his ship and stared at the message on his screen. He read it 3 times because he could not believe what it said. They had given Earth 30 days to choose a side in their war. They had given them 25. If humanity refused to pick an ally, both ancient powers would destroy Earth together. It was the only thing they had agreed on in 1 million years. The ship commanded was called the S Valiant. It was the vessel in Earth's small fleet, and it carried technology that no other species had ever seen. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 15 years ago. They were bobbies compared to the ancient races, but sometimes bobbies see things that old eyes have forgotten how to notice. Captain Lisa walked up to stand beside. She was a tall woman with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had served in Earth's Space Navy for 22 years, and she knew when a situation was hopeless. This situation looked very hopeless indeed. "We cannot win a war against either of them," she said quietly. "Our entire fleet is 12 ships. They have billions." Nodded slowly. He knew she was right. Earth had stumbled into something terrible when they reached the stars. They had expected to find wonders and new friends. Instead, they found two monsters locked in an eternal dance of destruction. Every species in the galaxy had been forced to choose a side. Those who refused were simply erased from existence. "Get me a channel to Earth Command," said. "I need to speak with Admiral." The communication took several minutes to establish. When Admiral appeared on the screen, she looked tired. She was an older woman who had helped build Earth's space program from nothing. Now she was watching everything she had created face destruction. "Jack," she said, "I assume you received the ultimatums." "I did, both of them. We need to talk about Operation Sunrise." There was silence on the channel. Operation Sunrise was a plan so secret that only 12 people in the entire human race knew about it. It was a plan so desperate that it should have been impossible. But desperate times required desperate measures. "The probability drives are ready," said finally. "Dr. Shaw finished the final calibrations this morning. All 12 ships in the experimental fleet have been equipped." Felt something stir in his chest. It might have been hope. It might have been fear. Probably it was both. The probability drives were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While the N had spent 1 million years making their weapons bigger and their shields stronger, humanity had gone in a completely different direction. They had learned to bend the rules of reality itself. "How confident is Dr. Shaw in the technology?" asked. "Confident enough to bet his life on it. He is aboard the S Horizon right now, running final tests." Turned to look at his bridge crew. These were good people, brave people. Commander Cole stood at the tactical station, his hand steady on the controls. He had survived 3 battles against raiders and he never showed fear. Lieutenant Commander Amy Torres sat at communications, her fingers dancing across her console as she monitored every frequency in the sector. Chief Engineer Danny was somewhere in the bowels of the ship, keeping the experimental engines running through sheer willpower and creative cursing. These people trusted with their lives. He could not let them down. Said, "We are going to do this. We are going to end a 1 million-year war with 12 ships and a whole lot of human stubbornness." Admiral smiled for the first time in days. "I never doubted you, Jack. The fleet is yours. Operation Sunrise is authorized." Closed the channel and turned to face his crew. They were all looking at him now. They knew something big was happening. They did not know the details yet, but they could feel it in the air. The weight of history pressing down on their small ship. "All hands," said, his voice carrying through every speaker on the Valiant. "This is your Admiral speaking. In approximately 6 hours, we will be attempting something that has never been done before. We will be flying into the middle of the largest battle in galactic history. Two fleets of billions of ships are about to fight to the death, and we are going to stop them." He paused to let that sink in. He could imagine the looks on faces throughout the ship. Confusion, fear, disbelief, but also something else, something uniquely human, curiosity, the desire to see if the impossible could be made possible. "I will not lie to you," continued. "This mission is dangerous. The technology we are using has never been tested in combat. We will be outnumbered by a factor of billions to one. By every logical measure, we should fail." Captain raised an eyebrow at him. This was not the most inspiring speech he had ever heard. Smiled. "But here is the thing about humans. We have never been very good at listening to logic. We landed on our moon using computers weaker than a calculator. We cured diseases that killed millions. We reached the stars in ships held together with hope and determination. And now we are going to end a war that has lasted longer than our entire species has existed." He straightened his uniform and looked directly into the ship's internal cameras. "Every single one of you volunteered for this mission. You knew the risks. You came anyway. That is why we are going to succeed. Not because we are stronger or smarter than the ancient races, but because we believe in something they forgot a long time ago. We believe that things can change. We believe that tomorrow can be different from yesterday. We believe that war does not have to last forever." The bridge was silent. Then Commander Cole began to clap, one pair of hands at first. Then Tors joined in. Then the sound spread through the entire ship as the crew responded to their admiral's words. Nodded to his crew and turned back to face the stars. Somewhere out there, two ancient fleets were preparing for their final battle. They had no idea that 12 small ships from a backwater planet were about to change everything. "Set course for the neutral zone," ordered. "It is time to make history." The S-Valiant jumped to faster than light speed, followed by the 11 other ships of Earth's experimental fleet. Behind them, Earth hung in space like a blue marble, fragile and beautiful. Everything they were fighting for, everything they might lose, but also everything they might save. The mission to end a million-year war had begun. The neutral zone was the ugliest place in the galaxy. It was a region of space so destroyed by the ancient war that stars themselves had died there. Planets had been cracked open like eggs. Moons had been turned to dust. The light that reached this place was old and tired, filtered through clouds of debris that had once been civilizations. Admiral Jack stood at the viewport of the S-Valiant and tried to comprehend what he was seeing. His human brain struggled to process the scale of destruction before him. This was what a million years of hatred looked like. This was the future of the entire galaxy if someone did not stop the madness. Dr. Shaw entered the bridge carrying a data pad. He was a thin man with messy brown hair and glasses that always seemed to be sliding down his nose. He had spent 15 years developing the probability drive technology. Now he was about to watch it either save the galaxy or fail spectacularly. "Admiral," Shaw said, "the drives are performing within expected parameters across all 12 ships. We are ready to proceed whenever you give the order." Turned to face the scientist. "Explain it to me one more time, Doctor, in simple terms. I want to make sure I understand exactly what we are about to do." Shaw pushed his glasses up and took a deep breath. He had explained this concept many times, but he never got tired of it. The probability drive was his life's work, and he loved talking about it. "The ancient races think about reality in simple terms," Shaw began. "They believe that a ship can only be in one place at one time. Their weapons, their shields, their tactics are all built around this assumption. A ship is here or it is there. It cannot be both." "But the probability drive changes that," said. "Exactly. The probability drive allows our ships to exist in what we call quantum superposition. We become like the particles that make up atoms. We exist in all possible positions simultaneously until we choose to collapse back into normal space." Commander Cole looked up from his tactical station. So we become ghosts. We can pass through their ships like we are not even there. Shaw smiled. More than that, we can choose exactly where and when we become solid again. We could materialize inside their command centers, inside their engine rooms, inside their weapons systems. And there is nothing they can do to stop us because their technology cannot even detect us while we are in probability space. Captain Lisa frowned. She was a practical woman who preferred problems she could shoot. What are the risks? There must be risks. Shaw's smile faded slightly. The technology is experimental. We have tested it extensively but never in combat conditions. If something goes wrong with the probability field, our ships could end up scattered across multiple dimensions. We might cease to exist entirely, or we might end up merged with enemy ships in ways that would be unpleasant for everyone involved. Unpleasant, Cole repeated dryly. That is one word for it. Lieutenant Commander Amy Torres suddenly looked up from her communication console. Her face had gone pale. Admiral, I am picking up the enemy fleets on long-range sensors. Both of them. They are gathering at coordinates just outside the neutral zone. Moved to her station and looked at the data streaming across her screen. What he saw made his stomach clench. The Grand Fleet stretched across space like a river of light. Their crystalline ships reflected every spectrum of radiation, making them shimmer like deadly jewels. There were billions of them. Each one carried weapons capable of destroying a city with a single shot. On the other side of the gathering storm, the swarm assembled in organic formations that made skin crawl. Their ships were not built. They were grown. Each vessel was a living creature, bred for war over countless generations. They moved like a plague of locusts, darkening the stars wherever they passed. They are preparing for something big, Torres said. I am intercepting communications from both sides. They are calling it the final engagement. Felt ice form in his blood. The final engagement. They mean to end the war today. One way or another, Shaw added quietly. Winner takes the galaxy. Loser becomes extinct. Both sides have committed everything they have to this battle. Chief Engineer Danny's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room. Admiral, I am seeing some unusual readings from the probability drive. Nothing dangerous yet, but we should probably do this sooner rather than later. Nodded even though could not see him. The engineer was right. They had a narrow window of opportunity. If they waited too long, the ancient fleets would begin their battle, and the chaos would make precise navigation impossible. He opened a channel to the rest of the experimental fleet. 11 other ships were waiting in formation behind the Valiant. 11 crews of brave humans who had volunteered for a mission that most people would call suicide. The S Horizon carried Dr. Helen Carter, the quantum physicist who had helped Shaw develop the probability field equations. The S Pioneer was commanded by Captain Samuel Gray, a veteran of Earth's first contact missions who had learned more alien languages than anyone else alive. Each ship had its own crew of specialists, each one essential to the mission's success. All ships, this is Admiral, you all know why we are here. You all know what is at stake. In a few minutes, we are going to do something that should be impossible. We are going to fly into the middle of that battle and we are going to shut it down. He paused, looking at the tactical display that showed 2 enormous fleets preparing to destroy each other. The N have been fighting for 1,000,000 years. They have forgotten what peace looks like. They have forgotten that war is supposed to end eventually. They have become so focused on killing each other that they cannot imagine any other way to exist. His voice grew stronger. We are going to remind them. We are going to show them that there is another option, not through violence, not through threats, but by proving that their entire way of thinking about war is wrong. He took a deep breath. Activate probability drives. Take us into probability space. Across 12 ships, engineers engaged experimental engines. The Valiant began to shimmer, its solid form becoming translucent, then ghostly, then impossible to see at all. One by one, the other ships followed. To any observer watching from normal space, it would have looked like the human fleet simply vanished, like they had never existed at all. The ancient races had sensors that could detect ships hiding behind moons. They had technology that could track vessels across dimensions, but they had nothing that could see what the humans had become. Because the humans were not hiding, they were not running, they were doing something far stranger and far more dangerous. They were becoming possibilities instead of certainties. And possibilities, as Dr. Shaw liked to say, were very difficult to stop. Probability space was nothing like normal space. Admiral Jack had been briefed extensively on what to expect, but the reality still took his breath away. Colors existed here that had no names in any human language. Shapes twisted in ways that made his eyes water. Time itself seemed to flow differently, stretching and compressing in patterns that made no logical sense. "Admiral, are you all right?" Captain Lisa asked. She was gripping the armrest of her chair so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. "I am fine," managed to say, "just adjusting to the new reality." Dr. Shaw moved across the bridge, checking instruments and muttering to himself. He seemed almost comfortable here, like a fish that had finally found its proper ocean. "Everything is working perfectly. We are now existing in quantum superposition. To the outside universe, we are everywhere and nowhere simultaneously." Commander Cole stared at his tactical display with an expression of pure confusion. "Sir, my instruments are telling me that we are currently inside 347 million ships at the same time. That cannot be right." "It is right," Shaw replied. "Or rather, it is one of many right answers. In probability space, we exist in all possible positions until we choose to collapse into a single location. Right now, we are inside every ship in both fleets. We are also outside every ship in both fleets. We are everywhere that we could possibly be." Lieutenant Commander Amy Torres pressed her hands against her temples. "This is giving me a headache." "Focus on your breathing," Shaw suggested. "The human brain was not designed to perceive multiple realities at once. The headache will pass once you stop trying to make logical sense of what you are seeing." Pushed aside his own disorientation and focused on the mission. They had a job to do, and philosophical confusion about the nature of reality would have to wait. "Shaw, can you give me a status report on the target vessels?" Shaw pulled up a holographic display that showed 12 points of light among the sea of enemy ships. "We have identified the command ships for both fleets. The flagship is called the Eternal Light. Grand Admiral Hex commands from there. He controls the movements of all 8 billion warships through a crystalline neural network." The display shifted to show a massive organic structure that looked more like a tumor than a spaceship. "The command hive is even larger. Hive Commander is linked directly to every ship in their swarm through biological telepathy. If we can disable these two command centers simultaneously, both fleets will lose coordination instantly." "Will they still be able to fight independently?" asked. "Yes, individual ships will retain their weapons and defenses, but without central command, they will not be able to coordinate attacks. The war machines will still have claws and teeth, but they will have no brain telling them what to bite." Nodded slowly. This was the key to the entire plan. They were not trying to destroy the enemy fleets. Even with probability technology, 12 ships could never defeat billions. Instead, they were going to create confusion. They were going to make the ancient powers stop and think for the first time in a million years. "All ships, this is Admiral, prepare for probability collapse. We are going to materialize inside the command centers of both fleets. Each ship has been assigned specific targets. Disable command systems only. I repeat, disable command systems only. We are not here to kill anyone." The acknowledgments came back from the other ships in the fleet. The S Horizon would target the secondary command ship. The S Pioneer was assigned to the communications hive. Each of the 12 human vessels had a specific job that would work together like pieces of a puzzle. Beginning probability collapse in 30 seconds, Shaw announced. He was sweating now, his hands flying across his console as he made final adjustments to the field equations. Remember, we will have approximately 3 minutes before their systems adapt to our presence. We need to complete all objectives within that window. Chief Engineer Danny's voice came over the intercom. Admiral, the probability drive is stable, but I am seeing some stress fractures in the containment field. Whatever we are going to do, we should do it quickly. Understood, Danny. Keep those engines running for 3 more minutes and I will buy you a drink when we get home. You will buy me a whole bar, Admiral. Almost smiled. Human humor in the face of impossible odds. That was something the ancient races had definitely forgotten how to do. Probability collapse in 10 seconds, Shaw counted down. 9, 8, 7. Gripped his command chair. Around him, his crew prepared for whatever was about to happen. Cole had his hand on the weapons console, ready to fire if necessary. Torres was already composing the message they would broadcast the moment they appeared. Stood beside, her presence steady and reassuring. 3, 2, 1 collapse. Reality snapped back into focus like a rubber band that had been stretched too far. His vision blurred, then cleared, and suddenly the Valiant was somewhere completely different. They were inside a vast crystalline chamber filled with light and strange music. Officers surrounded them, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute shock. "We are inside the command center of the Eternal Light," Torres reported. "Probability collapse successful." Across the chamber, a massive figure rose from a throne made of singing crystal. Grand Admiral Hex was 12 feet tall with skin that looked like polished marble and eyes that glowed with internal fire. He had commanded the fleet for over 10,000 years. He had personally ordered the destruction of countless worlds. And right now, he was staring at the small human ship that had just appeared in the middle of his most secure location. "Impossible," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "No ship can penetrate our defenses. No technology can bypass our shields." Opened a communication channel. "Grand Admiral Hex, I am Admiral Jack of the United Earth Coalition. Please do not be alarmed. We are not here to harm you. We are here to talk." Before Hex could respond, Cole reported from his station. "Admiral, all 12 ships have successfully completed probability collapse. All targets achieved. The command hive is also reporting an unauthorized presence. Both fleets are losing coordination as we speak." Looked at the confused and angry commander. Somewhere else in space, a similar scene was playing out with the leadership. Two ancient powers, both suddenly confronted with something they could not explain or defeat. "Your war ends today," said calmly. "Not because we have destroyed your ships or killed your soldiers, but because we have just proven that everything you believed about warfare is wrong. Your weapons cannot touch us. Your shields cannot stop us. Your million years of military development mean nothing against what we can do." Hex's glowing eyes narrowed. "Then why have you not destroyed us?" Smiled. "Because destruction was never the point. If you would like to know what the point is, I suggest you listen very carefully to what I am about to say." Outside the crystalline chamber, both ancient fleets drifted in confusion. For the first time in a million years, the war had stopped. And in that moment of silence, everything began to change. The silence that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had experienced in a million years. Billions of warships drifted without purpose, their crews unable to understand what had happened. Communication networks had collapsed. Weapons systems had gone offline. Navigation computers displayed only static. For the first time in living memory, neither fleet could coordinate an attack. Admiral Jack stood on the bridge of the Valiant, still inside the command chamber, and broadcast his message across every frequency in the sector. He spoke in Standard Galactic, a language that both ancient races understood, though neither would admit to speaking the other's tongue. This is Admiral Jack of the United Earth Coalition. I am speaking to every ship in both fleets. Your command networks have been disabled. Your weapons are temporarily offline. No one has been harmed and no one needs to be harmed. But this war is over. Grand Admiral Hex towered over, his crystalline form radiating fury. You dare to give orders to the Dominion. We have conquered 10,000 worlds. We have destroyed species that existed before your son was born. You are insects to us. Met the alien's glowing gaze without flinching. And yet here I am, standing in your command center, while your entire fleet floats helplessly in space. Perhaps it is time to reconsider who the insects really are. Across the sector, inside the command hive, a similar confrontation was taking place. Specialists stood before Hive Commander, a creature that looked like a nightmare combination of spider and scorpion, with mandibles that could crush steel and multiple eyes that reflected no light. Was not intimidated. She had trained for this moment her entire career. Hive Commander, my name is, I represent the human race. We are not your enemies. A's voice was a horrible clicking sound that's translator struggled to interpret. You have invaded our sacred hive. You have disrupted our neural connection. By the laws of the collective, your species must be exterminated. Shook her head. That is exactly the kind of thinking that has kept this war going for 1,000,000 years. Kill first, think later. Destroy anything you do not understand. Has that approach brought you any closer to victory? The Hive Commander paused. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No one had ever dared. Back on the Valiant continued his broadcast. For 1,000,000 years the N have been locked in a cycle of destruction. Neither side can win. Neither side can lose. You just keep killing each other, generation after generation, until you have forgotten that any other way of living is possible. He gestured to Dr. Shaw, who stepped forward with a data crystal. This is the complete technical specifications for our probability drive technology. We are offering it to both of you, not as a weapon, as a gift. Hex stared at the crystal like it might bite him. Why would you give us such power? We could use it to destroy you. You could, agreed. But you could also use it for something better. The probability drive does not just allow ships to bypass defenses. It opens pathways to dimensions neither of your races have ever explored. It provides access to resources that exist beyond normal space. There is enough energy, enough matter, enough room in those dimensions for everyone. You do not have to keep fighting over the scraps of this galaxy. On the Hive ship was making a similar offer to a. Your species reproduces faster than you can find new worlds to colonize. That is why you keep expanding, keep conquering, keep fighting. But what if there were infinite worlds available? What if you never had to fight for territory again? A's many eyes blinked in confusion. The concept was almost impossible to process. They had evolved as a species that competed for limited resources. The idea that resources might not be limited was fundamentally alien to their way of thinking. You speak of paradise, I said slowly. The old myths mention such a place, a dimension where the swarm could grow forever without limit. It is not a myth, replied. It is mathematics. Our scientists have proven that these dimensions exist. We have already sent probes to explore them, and we are willing to share what we have learned with both of your species, equally, without conditions. Watched as Hex processed this information. The Grand Admiral was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had been fighting for over 10,000 years. He had lost friends, family, entire worlds to the endless conflict. And now a species that had barely learned to walk among the stars was offering him something he had never imagined possible. An exit. Why? Hex asked, his voice softer now. Why would you do this for us? We threatened to destroy your planet. We gave you an ultimatum that would have made you our servants. Thought carefully before answering. This was the moment that everything depended on. The wrong words could restart the war. The right words might actually end it. Because war is not supposed to last forever, said finally. Where we come from, wars end. Sometimes one side wins and one side loses. Sometimes both sides just get tired of fighting. But eventually the killing stops and people find a way to live together. That is what peace means. It is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the understanding that destroying your enemy destroys a part of yourself as well. He paused, looking around at the stunned officers. You have been fighting for so long that you have forgotten this. Both of your species have. You cannot even imagine a universe where you are not at war. But we can. And we thought that maybe, if we showed you what that looked like, you might remember how to imagine it too. The communication channel crackled with incoming transmissions. Ships from both fleets were trying to contact each other, not to exchange threats or coordinates for attack, just to talk, to ask what was happening, to try to understand. Captain Lisa looked at her sensors and felt tears forming in her eyes. Admiral, I am detecting communication between and vessels. They are talking to each other. Nodded slowly. It was working. Against all odds, against a million years of hatred, it was actually working. Let them talk, he said. That is how it starts. That is how it always starts. You talk to your enemy and you discover that maybe they are not so different from you. Maybe they are afraid too. Maybe they are tired too. Maybe they want the killing to stop just as much as you do. Hex sank back into his command throne. He suddenly looked very old and very tired. We have been fighting for so long. So many of us have died. For what? I cannot even remember anymore. Then perhaps it is time to stop, said gently. Perhaps it is time to build something instead of destroying. Your species have incredible technology and vast resources. Imagine what you could accomplish if you worked together instead of against each other. Outside the command chamber, the two ancient fleets continued to drift. But something had changed. Something fundamental had shifted in the fabric of the galaxy, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. Opened his communicator. All ships, this is Admiral, Phase 1 complete. Prepare for diplomatic protocols. We have a peace treaty to negotiate. It was, he reflected, the strangest order he had ever given, and quite possibly the most important. 3 months had passed since the day the war stopped. Admiral Jack stood on the observation deck of Unity Station and watched construction crews from 3 different species working together on the expanding structure. Engineers used their crystalline technology to create frameworks of impossible beauty. Workers grew organic components that could heal themselves when damaged. Human designers coordinated everything, finding ways to combine alien technologies that had never been meant to work together. It was thought the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Captain Lisa joined him at the viewport, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to and stood beside him in comfortable silence for a moment. They had known each other for 15 years, and sometimes words were not necessary. The final peace accords were signed this morning, said eventually. Grand Admiral Hex and Hive Commander put their marks on the treaty together. First-time representatives of both species have been in the same room without trying to kill each other in about 800,000 years. Sipped his coffee. It was too hot and too bitter, exactly the way he liked it. How did it go? Awkward, very awkward. Hex kept twitching whenever a moved and A's mandibles clicked constantly, which apparently is a sign of extreme discomfort in body language. But they got through it. They signed the papers. They even shook hands. Well, Hex shook one of A's approximately 15 appendages. Close enough. Smiled. Peace was never pretty, especially at the beginning. Old habits and older hatreds did not disappear overnight. But the fact that 2 beings who had spent their entire lives trying to destroy each other could sit in a room together without violence was remarkable. It was, in its own small way, a miracle. Dr. Shaw appeared at the observation deck entrance, his ever-present data pad clutched to his chest. His hair was even messier than usual, and his eyes had the manic gleam of a scientist who had not slept in days. Admiral, you need to see these readings. turned to face the physicist. Good news or bad news? Good news. Very good news. The probability drive technology is spreading faster than we anticipated. 3 research teams have already developed working prototypes. 2 hive minds are growing organic versions of the drive that might actually be more efficient than our mechanical ones. Is that safe? Asked, giving both sides access to technology that can bypass any defense. Shaw shrugged. Probably not, but here is the interesting thing. They are not using it to develop new weapons. They are using it to explore. Both species have sent expeditions into the dimensional spaces we showed them. They are finding exactly what we promised. Infinite resources, infinite room to expand, infinite possibilities. Nodded slowly. This was what he had hoped for. The probability drive was dangerous, yes. Any powerful technology could be dangerous, but it was also an opportunity. For 1,000,000 years, the N had been fighting over a finite galaxy. Now they had access to something effectively infinite. The math of war no longer made sense when there was enough for everyone. Chief Engineer Danny walked up to join the group. He looked tired but satisfied, the way he always looked after completing a difficult job. Admiral, I have good news too. The S Valiant has been fully repaired after our little adventure. Probability drive is running better than ever. We are ready for whatever comes next. What do you think does come next? Asked. Considered the question carefully. He looked out at Unity Station, at the impossible collaboration happening before his eyes. He thought about the 17 new species that had already requested diplomatic contact with Earth, drawn by stories of the humans who had ended the ancient war. He thought about the future, stretching out before them like an unexplored ocean. We keep building, he said finally. We keep talking. We keep showing people that there is another way to exist besides fighting. The End are not suddenly going to become friends. 1,000,000 years of hatred does not disappear in 3 months, but they have agreed to try. That is the first step. Lieutenant Commander Amy Torres ran up to the observation deck, slightly out of breath. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Grand Admiral Hex wants to speak with you personally. Raised an eyebrow, put him through. The holographic display flickered to life and Hex's massive crystalline form appeared before them. The look different than he had 3 months ago. Less angry, less rigid, almost peaceful if that word could be applied to a being who had commanded genocide. Admiral, Hex said, I have been thinking about what you told me, about how wars are supposed to end, about how people find ways to live together. And what conclusions have you reached? Asked. Hex was silent for a long moment. I have been fighting for 10,000 years. I have lost count of how many beings I have killed. For most of that time, I believed I was doing what was necessary, that there were monsters who needed to be destroyed. That peace was impossible. He paused, his glowing eyes dimming slightly. But yesterday I spoke with a commander. His name is Al. He has been fighting for almost as long as I have. We talked about the war, about the things we had lost, about the things we had done, and I realized something. What did you realize? Asked gently. He is not a monster. He is a soldier like me. He was fighting because his people told him to fight, just as I was fighting because my people told me to fight. Neither of us chose this war. Neither of us wanted it. We were just born into it and we did not know any other way to live. Hex straightened his massive frame. I wanted to thank you, Admiral, not just for stopping the battle, for showing us that another way is possible, for reminding us that we have choices. Felt something warm spreading through his chest, pride perhaps, or hope. You are welcome, Grand Admiral, but the hard work is still ahead. Building peace takes longer than fighting war. I know, Hex said. But for the first time in 10,000 years, I am looking forward to tomorrow instead of dreading it. That is worth more than you can possibly imagine. The transmission ended and stood in silence for a moment. Around him, his crew watched with expressions of quiet wonder. They had all played a part in this moment. They had all helped create something that should have been impossible. Put her hand on shoulder. You did it, Jack. You actually did it. You ended a million-year war in a single day. Shook his head. We did not end anything. We just opened a door. Whether the end walk through it is up to them. Whether the peace lasts is up to them. All we did was show them the door existed. He looked out at the stars, at the ancient battlefields that were slowly being transformed into something new. Construction platforms where weapons factories had stood. Gardens growing in the ruins of military bases. Life returning to places that had known only death. But sometimes, said softly, showing people that a door exists is enough. Sometimes that is all it takes to change everything. The experimental fleet had completed its mission. 12 ships, 12 crews, one impossible idea, and a galaxy that would never be the same. Outside Unity Station, the stars continued to shine, indifferent to the affairs of mortal beings. But for the first time in a million years, the beings looking up at those stars were thinking about something other than war. They were thinking about the future. They were thinking about what they might build together now that they had stopped trying to destroy each other. And that, Admiral Jack thought, was the real victory. Not conquering an enemy, not proving humanity's superiority, but helping two ancient civilizations remember something they had forgotten. That hope was always possible, even after a million years of darkness. That tomorrow could always be different from today. And that the only war that truly matters is the war against despair. The end.